I have just got a brief introduction, and then we can go ahead and jump straight into the demonstration. So this will be how to use the Datastore Search. But before we begin, what is the Datastore Search? I'm not really familiar with how much expertise all of you have with the IATI technical infrastructure, but before we talk about the Datastore Search, first need to touch on what the data store itself is. So the IATI data store is a constantly updating repository of all valid activity data created by IATI publishers. So that data is made available across thousands of different XML files indexed in what's called the IATI registry. What the data store does is it consolidates all of those disparate files into a single location after running them through validation to make sure that they adhere to the IATI standard. So those individual data fields within the XML are then flattened and indexed by our search engine. So prior to this product, the Datastore Search, the only way to access that search engine was through our developer API, which is a programmatic interface that if you work with code, you might be able to access, but without technical skills, it's not accessible to everyone. It does offer a lot of flexibility, but the Datastore Search is sort of this simplified, forward-facing user interface to our IATI data store API. And so I've sort of put this matrix together to help us understand sort of the landscape of IATI data access tools and sort of where I see each tool falls. So along the top axes here, I have IATI standard expertise. So people who are very familiar with the standard, sort of familiar with the standard, and not very familiar at all with the standard. And then on the other axes here, I have technical expertise. So expertise with coding, with using APIs. So as mentioned earlier, the IATI registry is that sort of raw index. It stores the URLs, but it's only the plain XML. So you need quite a lot of technical expertise and quite a lot of standard expertise to get anything out of that. And then we have the Datastore API, which of course you need a lot of technical expertise to access, but it's a little bit more friendly to people who might not be as familiar with the standard because it puts everything all in one place and indexes all the fields into flat columns. And then we have two features of the Datastore Search mapped here. We have what's called the advanced search and the simple search. And I'll get into exactly how each of those work, but the advanced search, because you are building filters based off of the fields of the IATI standard, it does take quite a bit more standard expertise, but it does lower the threshold for technical expertise to access the IATI data. And then what we have, the simple search, is essentially the Google of IATI. It's a one single text box, indexes all the narrative fields. So it doesn't take nearly as much standard expertise to use it. It does take a little bit of standard expertise to get the most out of the exported data. But in that same bin is dportal, if anyone's used that tool. And that's also linked in the Datastore Search, and we'll cover that. And then finally, the country development finance data tool, which is sort of a pre-processed collection of Excel spreadsheets that takes relatively low technical and relatively low standard expertise to make use of. But it is sort of making a couple assumptions of the data, whereas everything stored in the IATI data store is sort of an unopinionated representation of the data. We don't make any unnecessary transformations. It's just the data as the publishers have published it. So in terms of features, we have the simple and advanced search query builders. We have a simple activity results display with links to dportal for people who find the activity display in dportal to be a little bit more rich. And then we have a multi-format export in XML, the original IATI XML, JSON, which is a JavaScript object notation, and CSVs in both a plain CSV format and a CSV format we've developed to be more friendly for use with Microsoft Excel. So with that, I think we can go straight into, if I can move these Zoom controls, straight into a demonstration. And feel free to follow along on your own computers, or if any questions arise during this, feel free to shout them out, or any examples you'd like me to go through. But just starting out, I don't know how many of you were able to attend the virtual community event last week, but I've been quite inspired by this livestock data portal that was put together by SEBI. So just for a couple of examples, I'm going to base it around the theme of livestock. So this is the Datastore Search. It's available at datastore.iatistandard.org. If you're from a French-speaking country, you can toggle everything into French there, or back into English. And this search bar in the center of the page right here is our simple search functionality. So this is tied into absolutely every narrative piece of data within every valid IATI activity. So if you were SEBI and you wanted to do a text search across all of IATI for the word livestock, you could simply type livestock into there, click enter, or click on the magnifying glass. And this is our results display here. So you can see that it has found 6,771 IATI activities that contain the word livestock. Right here, you can sort it by relevance or by the IATI identifier alphabetically. By default, it's going to be sorted in descending relevance. So this activity has come up first, Pastoral Livestock Support Project, because it's going to contain the word livestock numerous times across different fields within that activity. And then here, Zoom controls getting in the way a little bit again, are our download buttons. So if you have some technical expertise, or say you have a pre-existing tool that ingests IATI formatted XML, you might want to try one of these formats. However, for most of you, I imagine the most common download format you're going to want to look at is this Microsoft Excel format. And you can either download it such that one row in the Excel spreadsheet represents one activity. So in this case, 6,771 activities would yield 6,771 rows. But contained within activities in IATI, they can have numerous transactions and numerous budgets. So to make the analysis of the financial data a little bit easier, we've also provided one row per transaction, which will split out the transaction data into one row and then repeat the activity level data. And likewise for budget, it will split out one row per budget and repeat the activity level data. But instead of downloading 6,000 activities live on the call, we can take a look at a couple more features. So this is the display of activities. You can paginate through them just like this. You can go to the last page if you want by clicking that button. And by clicking on the title of any given project, you get a small display of some of the basic information about the activity. So we can see this one has been published by the OPEC Fund for International Development. Here's its unique IATI identifier. The data was last updated, obviously title there, description, participating organizations, and a couple of dates. And then if you want to view more fields graphically, I recommend you click the dportal button, and that will pop up. Oop, not in this case, I guess. Let's see if we can find another one. There we go. This will pop up. If the activity does exist in dportal, it will do a graphical display of all of the data there. So you can see this goes more into the documents attached to the activity, a little bit more of a graphical display around the dates, participant organizations, policy markers, etc. And if you want to download just a single file with just this activity, then these download buttons within there make that available. But that is not the only functionality available to the simple search, because it's actually quite a powerful search engine. So instead of just the word livestock, for example, let's say we wanted to pull in a couple more terms that we think might be relevant. So we could say, for example, livestock, and then in capital or, and then add some parentheses to make a grouping. You'd say agriculture and animal. So we don't want to just pick up activities that have the word animal. We only want ones that contain both animal and agriculture or livestock. So if we give that a run, it's found about 1,000 additional activities that are meeting that agriculture and animal search criteria. So that is sort of the Boolean operations there, as well as using parentheses for grouping the Boolean operations. And then we also have wildcard characters available to us. So say, for example, we don't want to just search for agriculture. Maybe we want agribusiness, agriculture, agricultural, etc. You could do AGRI and then replace the end of the word with an asterisk there. That's a wildcard for either 0 or more characters. We run search there. Notice that's found about an additional 400 activities. And say if we wanted to do animal or animals, you could add a question mark to the end of the word, and a question mark represents exactly one additional character. So in this case, it's actually gone down a little bit, and that's because it is searching for words that are exactly one character longer than animal. So you can actually do what's called a fuzzy search. If you hit a tilde in there, and what the fuzzy search does is it searches for words that are within a certain distance of the word you're looking for. So if I run that, I don't know if any good highlighting examples will come up. No, it's okay. For a better example in the fuzzy search, if we just do livestock and the tilde for a fuzzy search there, and then actually subtract out the word livestock, you can see the fuzzy search there has caught live talk. So someone's accidentally left the S off of it, but in that case, it's only one letter away from the word livestock. So it's managed to pick up this activity despite the typo. In this case, maybe a poor translation. Someone's written livestock with an F, and the fuzzy search has caught that. And this is also an example, just this minus sign here of the not operator. So if you've ever used a Google search engine, for example, you can make sure that you are subtracting. So in this case, I've just done a fuzzy search for livestock, and then I've subtracted off the literal term livestock just to find examples of typos explicitly. And then you can put words in quotes, for example. What's a good livestock example? We could say like animal farm. So if you put it in quotes, in this case, it's only found one activity that's matched the exact phrase animal farm. This project to build an animal farm at San Diego Community High School. And then if you put the tilde character after a quoted phrase, this is what's called a proximity search. So if I type 20 in there, for example, what this will do is it will match activities that contain both the word animal and farm, but they'll be allowed to be up to 20 words apart from each other. So in this case, now 75, here's the one we matched originally, but in this case, it's also matched farm animal, farm animal, farm animal. Okay, that looks like most, well, here we go. Increasing number of farms, high demand for high quality animal protein. So that is the proximity search. And I think that just about covers all of the features of the simple search functionality. From the home page, you can just click this switch to advanced search button, or say you have a query that you've been running through the simple search and you want to add a bit more specificity to it or filter it down a little bit based on other fields. From there, you can click the advanced search button, and what that will do is automatically populate this one field here. But the advanced search consists of a panel on the left here, which is the advanced query builder, and then a very similar activity result panel on the right to the simple search. So if I click the add filter button here, this all narratives field matches exactly what the searches we were doing in the simple search. But say, for example, you want to limit your text search just to the title element. We can pick title narrative from the field drop down here, and then we can type our livestock term there. And you can see from 6,800 matches on the all narrative fields, we're down to only 1,241 that only match the title. And say, for example, we wanted to add to that the description. We could put the same term here. So now we can say title narrative matches our fuzzy search for livestock, or we click the or button between the two, the description narrative matches, and that will increase the number of matches because we've done a Boolean or between them. Or let's say you want only activities that are really, really about livestock. You could click the and button, and that will only match activities where it's found in both the title and the description. And you can sort of go on in this way, building the query such that you can filter it down any which way you like. And there's a couple of tools we've also added into this to help with the logical grouping between these things. So say, for example, we were back to this title or description, and then let's say, and we want it to be a humanitarian flagged activity. There's a bit of ambiguity in this query because we haven't done any parentheses. So it's like, it must have this description match and be humanitarian, or is it's title or description and humanitarian. So in order to rectify that ambiguity there, we have in our special fields here this Boolean grouping. So you can create an open parentheses in the query. You can say title narrative, livestock, description narrative, livestock. And then you add another Boolean grouping and click the closing parentheses. So that makes it a group. And then in addition to that group, we can say and humanitarian equals true. So in this case, not too many activities found that either, oops, in this case, I've done an and there. I'll run that again. There we go. A couple more found. So either livestock in the title or livestock in the description, and it must be a humanitarian activity. And a practical example of this, where this sort of Boolean grouping becomes very useful, is in doing searches for specific recipient countries. And that's because in IATI, the recipient country can either be in an activity level element, or it can be in a transaction level element. So the most commonly I find myself using is the Boolean grouping in this way. So to create an open grouping there. Oh, and just a little tip, when you click to select this field here, just because there are so many fields in the standard that you can choose from, if you just start typing the name of the field, it will scroll down to where it begins. So if I type recip there, it'll pop down to recipient country code. So let's do like a YE for Yemen. So recipient, this is the activity level recipient country code. And then we can say or transaction recipient country code is equal to Yemen. And then we can close off that Boolean grouping. And then we can add whatever we like to here. So I'll just do a all narratives livestock again. So in this case, we've made one group that will ensure that it's matching either the activity level recipient country or the transaction level recipient country, and this text search for livestock anywhere within the activity. And a couple more pretty cool features that we've added recently. We have done a full geospatial index of every point coordinate contained within IATI as well. So in addition to just searching for these definite country codes, I can add in here the geospatial search special field. And this lets you open up a map. And if you hold down Shift and draw a box around where you want to search, and I'll do a little bit closer to make sure we don't get too many other countries, you can center your map on the geospatial area you want to search, and you can see it confirms the, so if I move that a little bit, those numbers will change. That confirms the bounds in which you're searching. Hit apply there, and go ahead and close off that Boolean grouping. So now not only were we searching the activity level recipient country code, the transaction level recipient country code, we can also search within the geographic bounds of a specific map for any activity that has been geocoded by the publisher. And then it's quite useful if you want to limit it to one particular publisher. And the one word of caution I'll give here is that our search engine typically ignores punctuation. So if you're ever typing in a code and you want it to abide by the punctuation within the code, you have to put it in quotation marks. So in this case, we can do US Gov 1 for USAID. If I run that, so this will only be activities to Yemen from this particular reporting org ref US Gov 1. And we can, however you like, you can further narrow it down. You could add another Boolean grouping. I know, for example, USAID typically only reports sector codes at the transaction level, but we could add 31163. For the livestock CRS sector code. I'll do another transaction sector code 31195. So these might be the two OECD DAC sector codes that SEBI is looking at. Close off that Boolean grouping. Run that. Oh, okay. I guess in this case, I guess the mistake I made there is I did both of these transaction sector codes. And of course, because the transaction can only have one sector code, it has to be an or combination in between those two. See if there's no, okay, still no results. So that might be a little bit too specific.
Alex, let me just chime in. If anybody has any questions, feel free to interject. As Alex is demonstrating here, I see that Johanna has a question. She says, "Is it possible to search using GeoNames ID?"
Yeah, definitely. So that will likely be in the location. I think more often than not, the GeoNames. Well, first of all, we can do vocabulary code, G1 for GeoNames, and we can say and location administrative code. We could do in there. Well, okay, I guess in that case, it's not using a different vocabulary. But say, for example, you knew that it was within the reference code there. If you went to GeoNames. So I haven't used GeoNames in some time, but I'm guessing this 69543, we can see whether anyone has put that as a location ref. No, nobody has used that. There are a couple fields that we have limited to the default code list. So in this case, if someone has put a GeoNames as their location administrative code instead of a country code, that's not yet possible yet, but that's something I'm going to write down so we can look at changing the default code list for a search. That's a good question. So I was just going to quickly demonstrate how you might use one of the exports from this, for example. So get back to our either recipient country code, and then code. So if you were to click Excel here and download it from the transaction core, USAID in particular makes a very easy example how to do this, because they do all of their sector codes at the transaction level. So if we download that CSV, open it up, you can very easily put together a pivot table out of the transaction download. And you can say, for example, transaction sector code on the row there, transaction value, do the sum of transaction value. And then in the filter fields, we can put the transaction, actually, let's put the transaction type code into the column fields there. Okay. So I also see some sector, so if I edit these properties, there's some sector codes in there that definitely aren't OECD DAC CRS sector codes. So if I do the transaction sector vocabulary as one of the filter fields here, we can filter this down to vocabulary 1, which will be the 5-digit CRS sector codes. And then we've done the transaction codes here. So transaction code 2 corresponds to commitments. 3 is disbursements. And we can make a quick and easy pivot table out of the transaction level download. Oh, that's why that's not really doing that. That will show us for USAID for Yemen as a recipient for each and every OECD DAC CRS sector code, the total commitments and disbursements. So in this case, I don't see any of our livestock sector codes allocated any transaction funds here. So this may be why when we added that into the advanced query builder, that yielded no results. Yeah, so this is what a download from the Datastore Search looks like. It can be a little bit intimidating because it does contain absolutely every single field within the IATI standard. But I recommend you just make a quick pivot table of it, take the fields of interest to you, put them into the columns, and that's a quick and easy way to start to explore the data within the IATI standard.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. Just to chime in quickly off that comment, obviously, yeah, it can be, if you're not very familiar with the IATI standard and, downloading something like this, yeah, it can be quite a lot of information to take in. I'm going to put in the chat our data use query corner. Oftentimes for general users, the functionality of this tool and being able to extract everything in IATI, through simple word searches. A lot of times what users can do is extract the specific IATI identifiers and then use the country development finance data tool to correlate those activities through CDFD. And what CDFD will do is display that pre-processed financial data, which is in a sense a little bit easier to look at for your average user of IATI. So I'll put that. We have a couple scenarios, queries that walk you through exactly the step-by-step process of how to do that, to use the two tools in tandem.
Yeah.
Sorry, Alex, go ahead.
No, just that's a good point. Like highlighting what you said. Say, for example, you wanted aid from USAID to Yemen, and we can look up the so it is quite useful to have the IATI standard code lists available when you're working with this data. So this is the tied status, was a recent example that came up from a user of the Datastore Search. And let's say you only want untied data. The data within the country data finance tool, I type Yemen into here, it's very good at making a pre-processed transformation of the data. It does make a couple assumptions about the structure of the data and multiplying out percentages, which the Datastore Search explicitly doesn't, because that's taking somewhat of an opinionated view of how the data should be transformed, whereas with the Datastore Search, we generally want to provide it as the publishers have done so. But you can see the data within the country data finance tool. It has the unique identifiers here, and then it has very easy to understand, they've converted it into different currencies. But it hasn't included the tied status of the aid. So after doing a query in the Datastore Search, you can filter it down to, so I've done here only tied status code 5, which is untied. And then you could do like a VLOOKUP between the results of this, or in this case, I'm just going to do a control F between the two. And you can find the identifiers in common between the two, and you can use that. In fact, I'll do a filter here, and we can filter it down to just that specific identifier. So the country development finance data tool has split this one activity out into 3 rows. And if you wanted to extract the financial values from this for that specific activity that you located in the Datastore Search, Cody has said that there's instructions on how to join those two in the data use query corner. But otherwise, yeah, we've tried to build tools to make it as simple as possible to build queries. So if there's dates, for example, it'll make sure that you're typing an appropriate date. You can pick it with a calendar. You could only find activities that are newer than 2020, for example, if you wanted to. For any like integer fields or anything like that, if I do a transaction value, you can do less than, equal to, or greater than. So for example, if you wanted to find, let's say find the largest transaction in all of IATI, start with that. Okay, there's still about 500,000, add a couple zeros, 50,000. And you can just explore the universe of IATI data in this way. So there's only 41 activities that have a transaction value greater than 100 million, for example.
Yeah, that's very interesting to pick up. I'm just, as a segue to Elisa's question here, she had raised, she said, is there a maximum number or recommended number of filters that can be used to launch your query?
No, there's you can go wild with the queries, and in fact, a feature that I haven't shown off yet. If you do spend a lot of time building a query and you want to monitor the results of that query over time, or you want to share it with a friend or debug it in that way, there is an import and export filter functionality. So let me see if I can find a recent one. Okay, so this was the one you were working on, Cody. So to debug his query, he sent me an export. So he's put in all narratives, mine action, risk education, just, a lot of search terms related to IEDs. He's done the Boolean grouping for Yemen. 65 matches for that. If you wanted to make a star or something like that, click the export button and you just download all your queries like that. And no matter how long it is, you can always re-import it and it will restore it exactly as it had been. There might even be a longer one. I know Sarah was working on a really long one for someone. Here we go. So this is a query that Sarah from UNDP had been working on. So reporting org ref of either the US government or USAID in a Boolean grouping to Micronesia, Marshall Islands, Palau, or Turkmenistan at either the activity or the transaction level. And she had been running this specifically for the purpose of finding, pulling that tide aid status code into some other work that she was conducting based off of the downloads from the country development finance data tool. And just one feature to flag as well. If the publisher has made their data available in French, the translation will also pull that out. So if I do, for example, the title narrative being both English and the title narrative being available in French, and run that, if it has a English title and an English description, it will show on the English page. And on the French page, it will pull the French versions of those out. So for this specific one, it should swap between, not that one, I guess. Yeah, so you can see they provided a couple of their texts in both English and French. And there's the English text there.
Don't see any more questions, but thank you to Alex again, and thank you to everyone who's joined the Data Use session. And you can contact us if you have any, as you're exploring the tool or any of our Data Use Access tools. The help desk, we're always here to help users optimize, their research or any their financial landscape analysis. So please feel free to reach out if you need anything. Any closing remarks, Alex?
Yeah, just to echo what you said, if you have any feedback on the tool or any suggested features, we love to hear that feedback. We love to hear from the community in terms of things they like to see in the tools, and any features that would make your work easier or make the tool much more useful for you. Please reach out to us on IATI Connect or through email, whatever works best for you.
Great. And with that, I think we'll close the meeting. Thanks again, everybody.